Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede and welcome to Facing South Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis gave his State of the State address last week, and in his view, everything is coming up freedom. He used the word freedom, or some variation of it, 15 times in his speech. But if there was one line that captured the 30-minute address, it was this:
"We were right and they were wrong."
I'm not sure anyone from either party should be bragging about what a great job they did during the pandemic, and certainly not in Florida, where more than 63,000 people have died. After the speech, I spoke to Nikki, the state agriculture commissioner, who is running in the Democratic primary to take on DeSantis in November. I asked her about the governor's speech.
Jim, I am disappointed in the governor. This is an opportunity when we have a state that is still, suffering from COVID. You have a divisiveness, you have hatred, you have all of this emotion that's going on in our state and our country right now. And you have a governor who had a microphone for as long as he wanted in front of not only the legislators, but family and friends and the entire state, and quite honestly, probably a lot of the nation watching. And he should have had this inspirational speech of how we're going to come together, how we're going to move, our state forward. And instead, he took this opportunity to throw red meat and to talk about things that are not on the forefront of Floridians' minds. We know, look at Miami-Dade, housing prices are through the roof. People can't afford property taxes. People can't afford their property insurance. Rent, look what happened in Hialeah this week. The protests that are happening because rent is increasing. People can't afford food and gas. And those weren't the issues that he was talking about. He was talking about things that really applied to Washington, D.C. and created more divisiveness and hatred in our state. And it was really disappointing that this governor and any governor should take these opportunities to inspire, to uplift everybody so people can walk away saying, that's my governor. And instead, he used that time to divide us once again and just throw red meat at his base.
Well, I think some people may have bristled at the tone when he says we were right, they were wrong. There is some truth to the notion of the way that he decided to handle the pandemic versus other states like New York, California. In the end, New York is now handling it a lot more like Florida did in the past. In other words, I was in New York for the holidays, and it's very clear that the governor, that the mayor, they have no intention of closing schools. Schools are going to remain open. They realize that from an economic standpoint, it puts a real burden on parents and families when the schools are closed. So in some sense, while the tone may have been off, was the governor not right about a lot of his policies when it comes to COVID?
And I've said that, I've said last year, that we should have had our schools back open. I was concerned that there was not the right protocols, the right money. How much money is sitting still today in the governor's office that should have been distributed down to our schools to make sure that there's proper ventilation, that there was proper hand sanitizers or the barriers that can go into classrooms, or being able to give more money to hire more temporary teachers during this time period. So while keeping our schools open was the right decision, it's the way that it was done. It's my way or the highway, and we're going to ban this and we're going to ban that. And again, making this divisiveness in our state was not the right answer. And the fact that he chose a lot of winners and losers when he was even reopening the state, I was very supportive of the reopening plan, even though he made sure that I was not part of it. I showed support for it, but then he chose winners and losers. He opened up this type of business, but not this type of business. That this one was, essential workers, but not this one. And so the way he handled that and the lack of transparency to the people of our state, and most importantly too, his lack of communication with our local officials, who are the ones on the ground every single day having to make these really hard decisions. Still to this day, he has not had an all mayors call at all during his administration, whereas I've had to step up, and I've had now 2 or 3 with county and city commissioners, talking to them, calling them, asking them what resources. We still have $646 million that was sent down from the federal government for testing for our K-12 system. Where's that money?
Let me ask you this. You raised a concern in December about rapid tests, COVID tests that were about to expire. The governor's office seemed to deny that this was true, and then in a press conference, the governor was asked specifically the question. He stepped aside and let the head of Department of Emergency Management come through and essentially say that you were right, that there are 1 million tests that now have expired, that they're seeking an extension from the federal government on. How did you learn that there were all those tests that were about to expire, and what do you think of the governor's handling of this?
So during kind of, I guess, the latter part of December, when all the lines were starting to form all across our state, and it was brought to my attention, where's the governor? And, there was no presence from the governor, the Surgeon General, emergency management. And then I came to the realization that he had been MIA. And then his office tried to hide it, posting a picture saying, oh, here's the governor at a bagel store. Well, it was a picture that was taken and posted a week earlier. And so there's all these questions about his just lack of not showing up for the people of our state. So I called my chief of staff. I said, look, the governor's going to be MIA. He's not going to be active on this issue once again. It's time for us to be back in the fold. So we started calling around to local health departments, to city and county commissioners, to even people in his own administration saying, what is he going to do? What is he not going to do? And in those communications is when we found out about the tests. And the person that gave us the information gave it to us intentionally to make sure that we got this information out. They were very concerned that these tests were just sitting there while Floridians were, again, not with family in these 4 or 5 hours worth of lines, were not back at work. And so we made sure that even before I found out about this, I had called on the governor to reopen our state testing sites, which he had closed in May. So that was my first call of action to the governor, which he, of course, has still to this day has not done. And so that's when we found out about the test, and we sent it out, in a press statement. His press secretary basically called me a liar, said that my questioning was bizarre. The press secretary for the Department of Health said, stay in your lane. And so it was very aggressive, attacking on me, saying that, I had no idea what I was talking about, when in fact I did and had concrete information to back it up. And unfortunately, once again, what this governor did is unprecedented. He never takes ownership of anything that happens inside of his departments, inside of his agencies. He passed the buck and passed the ball over to a bureaucratic secretary to take the fall for what was happening.
Let's talk about the legislative session. Probably the most controversial bill that they may take up this year was introduced on the first day of session, which would ban abortions after 15 weeks, even in the cases of rape and incest.
I'm outraged. I'm outraged. This is not what the people of our state want. The Roe v. Wade was decided 70 years ago. I think the anniversary is next week of Roe v. Wade. This is a woman's personal choice. This is her freedom. I want to talk about freedoms, which is what the governor likes to talk about. This is her freedom to decide between herself, her medical doctor, her experts, her family, her spiritual leaders. This is not a decision that government should ever be involved in. And the fact that this is something that they want to do day one of legislative session, I do believe that they're going to pass it. I do believe that the governor has signaled this week that he's going to sign it. And this is not the issues of today. And I've said this for my entire time up in Tallahassee. I kept talking to my Republican friends along the way, even when, I was on the other side doing government consulting. Why do you guys take up these issues? Government's supposed to help people. Government is supposed to be able to solve problems, not create problems. And I don't understand why we are going to use so much bandwidth during legislative session to have this fight when it's not necessary. I will do everything in my power to stand up, to fight, to encourage others to stand with me. This should never be a partisan issue. There are 1 out of 4 women have had an abortion. That's not just Democratic women. Those are women who are also Republicans. That decision is never easy on a woman. This is not something that a woman takes lightly. This is not their form of birth control. This is a really hard decision. And to make light of it and not even to do exemptions for rape and incest, it shows you that the point of this bill is to rise up their base and to throw this red meat. There are so many problems that are happening in our state, buildings collapsing. Where's the piece of legislation that talks and addresses what happened at Surfside? Where is our piece of legislation that fixes our housing problems and rent assistance and property assurance and taxing? There's so many problems in our state. And the fact that on day one of our legislative session, that the Republican Party, and now signaled by the governor, is going to sign it, shows us and the rest of the state that they're no longer in touch with everyday Floridians. And this is going to backfire on them in 2022 if they actually move forward with this.
When we come back, Republican State Senator Ileana Garcia. Stay with us.